In the mid-90s, the world of professional wrestling faced a serious challenge with the steroid trials. These trials centered around Vince McMahon, the head of WWE, known then as the WWF. The government accused him of distributing steroids to his wrestlers, leading to a significant legal battle. Of the 6 charges initially brought against McMahon, half were dismissed before the trial truly began. But the other 2, one for distributing steroids and one for conspiracy to distribute, almost brought the entire company to the ground. This is how drug addiction almost destroyed the WWE. During the 80s, wrestling was filled with muscled, larger-than-life characters. This was a time when steroid use was quite widespread in the sport. In fact, it's estimated that about 90% of wrestlers used some form of steroids. These were the days of extraordinarily large physiques, a stark contrast to the more athletic builds seen in earlier decades. This era was also the dawn of Hulkamania, a cultural phenomenon that propelled wrestling to new heights of popularity and integrated it firmly into mainstream pop culture. The man at the helm of this transformation was Vince McMahon. He didn't just see wrestling as a sport. To him, it was a platform for creating superstars, icons who were as much about charisma as they were about physical prowess. Wrestlers like the Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man Randy Savage perfectly embodied McMahon's vision. They were not just athletes, they were showmen with immense bodies and personalities that captivated audiences, blurring the line between sports and entertainment. Now, these men certainly didn't just wake up with their massive physiques. Many followed strict training and bodybuilding routines for years. However, some resorted to performance-enhancing drugs like anabolic steroids and human growth hormones. This trend wasn't unique to wrestling. It was also seen in major sports like the NFL and the Olympics. These substances not only raised questions about fair competition, but also about the athlete's health. In 1987, the WWF, led by Vince McMahon, introduced a wellness policy. Interestingly, this policy was more focused on recreational drugs such as marijuana and cocaine, rather than performance enhancers. This shift in focus was partly due to a controversy involving the Iron Sheik and Jim Duggan, who were arrested on suspicion of DUI and found with marijuana and cocaine. Their arrests disrupted kayfabe, the staged reality of wrestling, as they were publicly seen together despite an ongoing on-screen feud. McMahon, concerned about the media fallout, fired them and implemented a drug testing policy. Still, wrestlers continued to obtain anabolic steroids and use them better, but the question still remained as to how wrestlers were able to obtain such performance-enhancing drugs. That's where Dr. George Zahoran comes in. He was a physician appointed by the Pennsylvania State Athletic Commission. Zahoran, who was involved in WWF events in the mid-80s and even appeared on some television segments, played a key role in distributing steroids to many wrestlers. This practice was illegal following the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988, which prohibited the distribution of steroids without a medical purpose. It was a widely known fact within the company that Zahoran was supplying steroids to wrestlers. Despite this, he continued to work with the WWF even after the law came into effect. In a revealing statement from July 1991, Vince McMahon himself admitted to having purchased steroids from Zahoran in 1987, reflecting the extent of Zahoran's involvement and the acceptance of his activities within the WWF. Anita Scales, an employee of Titan Sports, the parent company of WWF, recognized the risk of Zahoran's actions and recommended his removal. She brought this to the attention of Linda McMahon and Pat Patterson, but her concerns were initially dismissed. Patterson's alleged comment about wrestlers needing their candy highlights a dismissive attitude towards the seriousness of steroid use. However, by late 1989, the tone within the WWF leadership changed as they became aware of a federal investigation into Zahoran's activities. Linda McMahon, in a memo to Pat Patterson, expressed concern about a potential state investigation into illegal drug use, including steroids. She mentioned a conversation with Vince McMahon and a warning from a State Department official about investigations involving Dr. Zahoran. Consequently, Vince agreed with Linda's suggestion that Zahoran should no longer attend WWE events. This decision marked a significant shift in the WWF's handling of the steroid issue, coinciding with broader legal actions being considered by the Department of Justice. The case against Zahoran intensified when a former client, weightlifter William Dunn, cooperated with the FBI. Dunn recorded a conversation with Zahoran, which led to Zahoran being caught destroying documents. The evidence linked him to several wrestlers, leading to his indictment in February 1991 on 15 counts, including distributing steroids to wrestlers like Rick Martel and Roddy Piper. The WWF managed to prevent Hulk Hogan from testifying, though the other wrestlers' testimonies were damaging. Zahoran's defense that he was unaware of the law change was dismissed, leading to his sentencing in December 1991. Hulk Hogan's involvement became a point of contention. He denied steroid abuse on the Arsenio Hall show in 1991, but later admitted to limited use under medical supervision. Following this, WWE tightened its wellness policy, imposing stricter testing and penalties for steroid use. In November 1993, Vince McMahon faced charges for steroid distribution and conspiracy. The prosecution's case included a check payable to Zahoran and allegations that McMahon distributed steroids. However, the defense argued that the steroids were not for wrestlers, but for personal use by others. Key testimonies, including Hogan's, stated that McMahon never encouraged steroid use. The only direct accusation against McMahon came from wrestler Kevin Wackles, Nails, but his credibility was questioned. Ultimately, McMahon was acquitted as the prosecution couldn't directly link him to distributing steroids to wrestlers. While WWE and McMahon might have gotten off easy in the trial, the drug problem did not end there. An incident in 2007 involved the suspicion of 10 wrestlers, including high-profile names like Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, and Edge, for violating WWE's wellness policy, which indicated ongoing concerns about performance-enhancing drug use in the organization. Mr. Kennedy, also suspended, publicly denied steroid use and emphasized the regular drug testing and strict policies within WWE. He suggested that while steroids had been a problem in the past, the organization had effectively addressed the issue. However, the situation was more tragic than what was portrayed. Several deaths in the wrestling community, such as Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Ross Haas, and Bill Pullman, were linked to steroid use. Most of these deaths were attributed to heart attacks, but the case of Chris Benoit was particularly disturbing. Steroids were found in his house while following the tragic incident involving the death of himself, his wife, and son, raising questions about the role of steroids in the tragedy. Another wrestler, Test, passed away in 2009, and his autopsy revealed he suffered from a severe case of brain damage, likely due to repeated concussions, a condition known as CTE. This, combined with his history of steroid and other drug abuse, painted a grim picture of the toll that professional wrestling can take on the athletes' bodies and minds. Similarly, Rick Rude's death in 1999 due to heart failure was linked to his steroid and drug use, underlining the long-term health impacts of these substances. Kurt Henning's death in 2003 from acute cocaine intoxication and Umaga's passing in 2009 due to acute drug toxicity further emphasized the issue of drug use in wrestling. The industry has noticeably moved away from the era of the big muscle-bound wrestler to a more diverse representation of athleticism. Today, wrestlers typically have smaller, more athletic physiques, reflecting a broader range of wrestling styles and a shift in audience preferences. Organizations like WWE have implemented stricter health and wellness policies, including enhanced drug testing for steroids and other banned substances, concussion protocols to better diagnose and treat head injuries, and comprehensive wellness programs. These initiatives aim to safeguard the health and well-being of wrestlers, addressing the physical and psychological challenges of the sport.